Hello, hello. It's DNN Dave. I hope everybody is doing wonderful today. Coming to you live. We're gonna keep it raw, y'all. And we're gonna jump in today and do something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. And I'm excited because today I've got a guest with me. My guest is Steve Krantzman. Did I say that right, Steve?
You
I
did.
pronounced that
Yeah,
okay.
very good.
I was like Krantzman. Yeah, it depends on how far south or how far, if we're in
Yeah.
Europe or not. Or welcome, Steve. I appreciate you joining me.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Good deal, good deal. Well, I'm so excited that you're with me because, like, you were just recently sharing with me in one of our community channels about like what you would love to get involved in some extension development and understanding a little bit more about that world. But where do you start? Yeah,
Exactly. It's a little daunting. I mean, even if you understand some programming, DNN's kind of a little bit of a different breed of beast there. So how do you get involved?
it is because a lot of people are overwhelmed. I think right at the beginning because there's so much you can do within DNN. It's not always obvious like how and why, to really
That's
get
for sure.
started in it and so forth. And over the years, I mean, gosh, this platform is what, approaching 20 years? Holy cow, that's crazy. I guess what, 17 years or so. I mean, that's a long time
Yeah,
for a particular platform to be around. But over the years, the patterns have evolved and we've started supporting more modern kind of patterns for developing extensions in DNN. So, well, today we're going to start. This is a multi part live coding stream. Today's first session, and we're going to be starting from scratch and, well, almost from scratch and building a file upload module using the we call it a SPA pattern, a single page application pattern, but it's really just a HTML, JavaScript, CSS, kind of pattern there using Web API. And we get to dig into several little different areas there. My dog is wanting to come over and say hello. So, hello, everybody. This is Clopper. Um, you got to go, buddy. I got to have that arm. Um, so, we're gonna start doing that, and we're gonna kickstart it a little bit. There are many different ways that you can start a a module development project in DNN. You could start purely from scratch and follow along in some tutorials that maybe you've seen out there, or some blog posts where people show you how to do stuff, and really kind of build it from scratch. But we're going to actually use a starter project in our case. But you can also, there are many tools out there for scaffolding out projects and kind of getting a step further in the process there, where let's say you want to call your project my project, you know, and that's kind of how you want to namespace it, my company dot my project or something. You kind of want to do that. And then the problem really comes into, well, not a problem really, but you have to kind of decide what your preferred patterns are and your structure of your projects and how you kind of like working. And it's not always cut and dry. Some of the tools are, well, almost all of the tools are opinionated in some shape, form, or fashion. So, one of the things that we did is we've started building out these starter projects, and they're freely available for anybody that wants to use them. I'm going to switch over to my other screen. And out here on GitHub, there is an organization called DNN Community. And oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, GitHub has a dark theme now, or a dark mode. I'm so excited about this.
Hey, I didn't know that, so that's a good thing to point out there. I
Yep,
like
you
it.
can go right over. I mean, gosh, we're digressing here, but you can go over into your settings there, and there's a new appearance tab, and you can switch it over to dark mode. So I'm real excited. I've been using a browser plugin for a while to do my own little dark mode, but this is even better. So if you go out to their github.com/DNN Community, there's tons of things out here. But if you start searching for the word starter, you'll see there's quite a few starter projects that are in here. Now, these are not templates. Templates in Visual Studio allow you to do some pre-setting up of the project, if you will. And there are some popular ones out there. I mean, there's the ones that have been there for so long by Chris Hammond, called oh my gosh,
Chris Talks.
Chris Talk. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, I was having a brain lapse there for a second. The Chris Talk templates out there, and they're great. There's a lot to those, and sometimes setup can be a bit daunting. There's the Yeoman-based generators. One from Matt Rutledge that is Yo DNN, I think, is kind of the command line on that one. It's also freely available on GitHub. And there's also Appendo Ventures, Will Stroll put together. It's kind of a, it was based off of Matt Rutledge's tool, but it's just a different module pattern, structure of the projects and the solutions and so forth. But it has been maintained really well. So that one's also available out there. But what these are not really like those. They're not templates or scaffolding tools. They're really a starting point for a working project right out of the gate. And then you can modify those to your liking, but you're going to have to do that in a manual fashion. So that's what we're going to do today, is manually convert one of these starter projects to the proper named project that we want to do. And we're going to use a little tool to help us do that quickly. But today we'll be using starter-module-spa. Okay. Just the pattern that we're going to use for this particular module. We're going to use a tool that I developed called DNN CLI. It is also freely available out here on GitHub, but it's also published to NPM. If you do a search on NPM for DNN-CLI, you'll find this on the DNN Community org out here. But I'm on the wrong page, wrong tab there. There we go. But this is a nice little command line tool to help you quickly get started on one of these starter projects. I think in the future it'll probably evolve into a bit more of a scaffolding kind of thing, but this is really the starting point for it. And then on GitHub, it's out here as well under the DNN Community org. Just search for DNN CLI when you're on this main page, and you'll find that as well, if for any of you that are interested in the actual code of that. But there's very nice instructions out here on how to get DNN CLI and install it on your local machine and to use it. Now, you don't have to do this. For those of you that are familiar with GitHub and Git, you could just go to the repo and you could clone this repo into your local environment, and you would be at really essentially the same starting point. But I wanted to take an opportunity to show how to do that via DNN CLI, and you don't have to know Git or GitHub and that kind of thing. So what we're going to do here, and Steve, feel free to chime in if there's anything
Well,
that's
sure.
like,
Actually,
you know.
I did have a question. Is the DNN CLI fairly recent development?
It is. It is, and it's still not really at a V1. It's really kind of the starting point. I think I got it 0.3.2 right now, but it's still workable. You know, there's no bugs that I'm aware of in here. It's just that it's not all complete at this point. Some of the extension types are missing and so forth. Basically, anything that you see over here when you search for the word starter, let's see here. Any of these are in there, but that's all the extension starter projects that have been created. Anything that has a description. So any of these that don't have a description are still empty. Those are to be done. And there's even more to be done, but that's basically it. It's fairly new and not been talked about a whole lot. So I did one live stream on it, I think, and posted a few things in social, but it's yet to really kind of be known, you know, at this point. but it's really, really easy to use. So what we're going to do is we'll follow the instructions, and these are the same instructions on GitHub as there are on NPM. So I've already ran this command, but I can easily run it again. I'm just going to open up, in my case, PowerShell, but you can use command prompt or whatever you'd like. And we can just simply copy. Now, you can choose which package management tool you want to use. The two main ones for Node packages are Yarn or NPM itself. I prefer Yarn myself, so I could just copy this. And of course, you would have to have that package management system installed, on your machine. So we won't go too deep into that. But usually installing Node, you will have NPM automatically. And then you can install Yarn if you'd prefer that package management system. They're essentially the same thing. They just handle things a little bit differently. So I could paste that into there. And if you have Yarn already installed, you already have Node, all that, then this will globally add the package for DNN CLI. That way you can, anywhere on your system, you can run DNN CLI. So I can do this. And since I already have it installed, this is really just making sure that I'm up to date on the latest one. Okay. So I was kind of already at that, at that point. So it looks like my Yarn is out of date. So I probably need to update that at some point, but no big deal there. We got a success on the installation of DNN. So what this will allow us to do, and now I've already kind of gone to a directory here that I want to put this module in, because what this is going to end up being is we're going to call this nvQuickUpload, and it's going to be a new open source project that's out there under the nvQuick brand. So I'm going to create a folder. This is a representation in Explorer over on the right as to where I'm at over here. So I'm just going to create a new folder over here. And I'm going to call this upload. All right. And then we can open that folder, and I can leave this open over here while we do this. So I'll just go ahead and change directory into upload here. And you can see it's empty. So I'm going to just type DNN because I just installed DNN CLI. So that gives me the ability to use this command. So I'll type DNN. And then I want to do a module. Now you could just use your arrow keys and go to the other extension types that are in here. Again, these are not all there yet, but definitely this module one is. So if I select module, I'm going to hit enter. And then I can choose which module pattern I want to use. And in this case, we're going to be using the SPA pattern. So I'll choose that. And what this is really doing behind the scenes, there's actually quite a bit that's going on, but ultimately that's just doing a clone of the Git repo into the folder that you're already in. But as you can see here, I didn't have to know anything about Git or anything like that in order to do it. Over here on the right, I now have fully a workable project folder that is a clone of what's out there, and it's the latest and greatest, version of this particular starter project. So that's really all we needed to do in order to get started. Now, what we want to do at this point is I want to show this module that's already working in its current state, and then we're going to convert it over into a new project with a new name. And that sounds probably pretty easy, but there's quite a few steps that we're going to have to take in order to do that kind of right, on that, or at least to get it in a workable fashion for us. So let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio. I've got Visual Studio 2019 Community Edition here. That's completely free, and you can get that. You just do a search on. And now I have got a issue with my. Great, my battery just went dead in my trackpad. Okay, I will use another trackpad. Okay.
Live streaming.
Oh, actually, it just keeping it raw, y'all. Well, it seems to be working again. I just lost connection there for a little bit. I was like trying to click it and it wasn't clicking. So I'm just going to open this up. And what we'll do, I've got mine set up to it so that it always opens up as an administrator or runs it as an administrator. Because a lot of times you need those kind of permissions when you're using Visual Studio. So if you're not familiar with how to do that, you can right click on that and actually go to the properties and go to advanced here, and you can just check this run as administrator. That way every time you click that, it's going to automatically open as an administrator. So that's a nice little trick. You can also right click on it and you can just run as administrator each time. So if you have use cases where you don't want to run it as administrator, you can do that. So I'm going to say yes, and it's just going to open up Visual Studio. And I do it this way because if we were to just double click on the solution file here, the Visual Studio solution file, it would not open as an administrator. So that's why I go through this process. So I would just go and open a project or solution.
So when we're doing the development, it definitely has to be done in a full-blown IDE as opposed to like Visual Studio Code, which is just a editor.
That is a great question. It really depends, Steve. I mean, if you ultimately want it to be as an, so there's pieces of it that can be done in Visual Studio Code. And for those that don't know, Visual Studio Code is the more lightweight, more text editor-ish kind of solution that you can use. It's just quicker for a lot of front end kind of development. So what I would say is, if you are doing more front end work, then yes, absolutely, you could use VS Code for it. Ultimately, these starter projects are using MS Build for this. So it's set up to where you don't have to know some third-party build system that's built right into and native to Visual Studio IDE. So yes, is the end of real bottom line of that is, yeah, you're going to need full-blown Visual Studio for this. At least the back end pieces. So like when you're doing API endpoints and stuff like that, you're going to have to be able to compile those, and the experience is set up to just do that as an F5 experience, or a build experience in Visual Studio. Okay, so I'm going to navigate to the upload folder. That way I can choose the solution. Now, there's a solution file and there's a project file. You could just open up the project if you want to, but the solution references the project. So I usually just open up the solution. You're going to always have to have a solution anyway. So even if you open up the project, it's going to prompt you to save as a solution when you get out of there anyway. So this is going to open up the project here in Visual Studio, full-blown Visual Studio. And I have rearranged my windows here. I probably should have fixed that before got on here. Let's see. This is kind of the default experience, but we've got a full project in here, and it's basically the same thing that you see when you're looking at the files there, but some extra little pieces that you have in Visual Studio. But what we should be able to do is, in a couple of steps, be able to run this right away. So first thing you're going to probably want to do is, this uses NuGet packages. A lot of people out there will reference DLLs directly, and that's kind of the old way of doing things. So this project is set up to do things really cleanly and do things. All the references are in here as NuGet packages, but you can see they all have a caution on them right now because it can't find them. Well, whenever you have a project that's using NuGet, you need to actually just right click on the solution itself and restore NuGet packages. And that's kind of the starting point. And that's a kind of a gotcha that a lot of people run into when they're trying to build projects that they've gotten off of GitHub or wherever else. And I also just realized that our videos covering up a bit of that information. So I'm going to resize this just a little bit here so that everybody can see everything. But now under our references, we should be able to I probably just need to build it. Let's see here. Refresh. Okay, now those are fine now. So each of them are referenced appropriately to the packages. So that being done, this should just build. So I could either right click on the project itself or the solution itself, or I can just come up here to the build window and just rebuild the solution, all of it. So fingers crossed, keeping it raw, y'all. It should build, and it does. It's succeeded. Now we are in debug mode at this point. So what this did, and I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail, but it's nice to understand what's really happening here. This is put together using MS Build, and it's not real fancy. I mean, it's real simple, about as simple as you can get for a DNN module using MS Build. And a lot of times, if you see some of these open source projects out there, they have a really convoluted MS Build system if they're using MS Build at all. And it's really hard to understand what all is going on. So let me walk you through where that stuff is. There's a piece of it that's in the actual project file itself, and we'll look at that in just a few minutes. But the only other build related piece to this is right here under build scripts, and it's module package.targets. And the way I did this is that all of this section here, reusable variables, that's really the only thing that needs to be changed. Everything else is pretty automated in the way that it works, because everywhere else uses these variables. And we'll see in a minute where we're going to change these to rename the project the way that we want to do. But the way that this is set up, and if we look at the files on disk here, you'll see that there is a website folder. After I hit build, it actually created a website folder. So by default, the idea is that you can install DNN into this website folder. And notice that when we built in debug mode, it actually created a bin and a desktop modules. These are actually folders. I'm sorry, folders. These are actually folders that are native to DNN. The bin is where your DLLs are going to get compiled to, and the desktop module is where your module is going to live. So by default, it put it into, and let me just expand this out a little bit so we can see the path. We go into here. It actually put it into desktop modules, starter module, SPA folder. And this is all that's needed in order to run this module in that instance of DNN. So the way it's set up in debug is it'll just copy the necessary files over to the appropriate folder, because our actual source is not in the website. You know, that's actually what we're distributing or building to. So it's kind of the output of our working code to that. But our source is here, right? Through all these.
So would you recommend building a dnndev.me website right there in that website folder?
It really is a preference thing, Steve. I mean, I personally don't like when I'm doing my own module stuff. We're actually going to use this website folder for this, so we'll see how we use that. But you can install that using nvQuickSite, or you could do that manually there and then point your local domain to it. We're going to use nvQuickSite today, actually, to put that in there. And it'll set up a URL to that. That way, when we run the site, we're actually running what we just built from the module. So we're actually developing this not in line with DNN. And that's a pattern that I really like, because you could actually test on multiple versions of DNN. You can, deploy them to other areas. And this is where you're going to do it, is in your targets. So if you'll see here, there's the deploy folder that's set up. So this is a variable here that matches this. So that's the name of the folder that we by default have it set up as is website. But you could also just put a path to a completely different directory there, and that's kind of your root website folder. So I usually keep all of my local instances in a particular area, and I don't associate them inside the project directory that I'm working on. So a lot of times I'll just come in, I'll just change this one thing, and I'm up and running, you know. And sometimes I use the same DNN instance for multiple projects too, because I can, you know, and I don't need to have a separate instance. So it kind of helps in that regard. And then this controls the path to where the module is going to go. This is the actual, when we build in release mode, that's where it's going to actually put the package, or it's where it's going to stage the packaging process of it. And let's just go ahead and build this in release mode as well, so that you'll see what happens. I'll switch that over to release mode and then build, rebuild solution. So now you'll see it does a little bit more. It puts the DLL in the proper folder, you know, to compile it, but then it actually creates an install package. And what this install package, it actually put it in website install module, and then the name of the package. And what's cool about that is that in DNN, it didn't actually update anything in bin and desktop modules when we did in release mode. And what this is good is it creates the install module, which are DNN folders, by the way. And it'll actually put this install package in there. That way you can actually test your install package to make sure it's doing what you want it to do. So in DNN, you can go to the extensions where you would install an extension and go to available extensions, and this will automatically show up in there. So that's kind of the build process of how this is going to work. In debug mode, it's going to replace the actual files that you're developing, whereas release mode is going to build this install package so that you could test the install process. Okay, so clear as mud.
Definitely. Hey, brings me to a question. So we're developing a module for DNN, and there's been some tremendous changes with DNN over the years. And I know that I believe the community is trying to get away from web forms, and we're moving more towards .NET Core. So I guess SPA would be definitely one approach that we could take to module development that would be forward compatible when DNN finally gets to that point where we're relying on DNN Core, or .NET Core, I mean.
Yeah, I think going with a SPA pattern or an MVC pattern even is probably your safest bet. And that really comes down to your preferences and tooling, and that kind the pattern that you're developing in. Both of those are more future proof, if you will. There's going to be less work probably to convert those over to something in another platform or in a .NET Core version of DNN. That being said, there's nothing wrong with developing in web forms for DNN. As of right now, there's no strategy actually to try to really, make a huge push to .NET Core because of the life of the .NET framework is actually longer than the life of .NET Core. The actual support life. A lot of people don't realize that. It's so easy to want to jump on the shiny new object, kind of thing. And obviously .NET Core is the future of Microsoft, but at the same time, .NET Framework is not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, we're good till at least, oh gosh, what was it? Mitch Sellers just did a recent blog on this where he talked about it, but I mean, it is a long time from now, and that's just the current support, life cycle of it.
Well, that's really good to know, because I still have a lot of modules that are dependent on web forms.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would probably try to start converting those, over to a SPA or an MVC pattern, but you're not in any huge rush. It's not like, oh, DNN's going to jump to .NET Core next week and you gotta, you're screwed. It's not going to be that way. So you got plenty of time with it, and who knows what the future is going to hold. There may be another pattern that comes out that's a little bit more maps to a web forms kind of pattern. Like for instance, if at some point Razor Pages, gets a little more traction in DNN, then that's a very similar pattern to web forms actually. So that may be an option too in the future. But yeah, I mean, I think SPA and MVC, depending on your preferences there, is surefire kind of way to go and future proof, and also set the stage for you to potentially, have those same solutions working for other kind of content management systems as well. Because in a SPA module, really your entire app is just HTML, JavaScript, CSS, right? And it's how you hook it into DNN that's special, so you could theoretically take that same solution and hook it into WordPress or into Joomla or into something else, but a little bit of work, but the front end piece of it would remain the same, right? So yeah. I tend to like this pattern because it doesn't tie me to a Microsoft stack. Okay, so that was a nice little tangent there. So what we'll do here is we're going to install DNN into the website folder just to get us up and running in a module. But the good news is we've got a project that with almost no effort we could compile right out of the gate and build. So we know it theoretically works, right? We just have to prove it here. So what we've done is we've proven that the project is in a good state and it builds. So that's good. And the trick, just as a refresher, is to right click and restore NuGet packages before you start building so that you don't get into what is so awesomely called NuGet hell. So if you do get into NuGet hell, no problem. There's ways out of it, but feel free to reach out to the DNN community and we'll help you with that.
Yeah, right? I've heard the term, so I'm sure I will.
DLL hell, NuGet hell. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can get into. But okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use nvQuickSite actually to build this out. And for those of you that aren't aware of that, you can go to nvQuickSite.com and you can download. This is a tool just to help you to quickly install DNN. But if you go to download, this will actually take you to GitHub, where this is also an open source project that we'd love to have contributions on and input and bug reports and all that kind of stuff. But you can download the MSI file here, and that's actually a Microsoft installer file. Will allow you to install it on your local computer. It's also available now on WinGet. So for those of you that are familiar with WinGet, you can actually install it from the command line using WinGet. So I'm going to actually just load up nvQuickSite. I just realized I don't have it pinned to my taskbar down here. I've already installed it, so we'll just open it up. Hopefully I'm running the latest and greatest on this machine. I didn't check that before our live stream. Oh, yay, I did actually upgrade it. Okay, so we're on version 2.1.0. So in this case, we're going to be developing against the latest and greatest version of DNN Platform. So by default, that's going to be what's selected. If you do need an older version, you can select any of the older versions there, but we'll keep this one. We'll click next. And it's saying that I've already downloaded this in the past because I've used this to install a local copy before, or a local instance. So it's just asking me if I would like to download it again. I don't really need to download it again since I already have it, so I'll say no. And then here's where we want to actually put this into an instance that's associated with that website folder that we referenced earlier. So we'll just call this one nvQuickUpload because that's ultimately what the module is going to be called. And I use a pattern of nv, .loc. You could use dnndev.me if you'd like. Nothing wrong with that either. But nvQuickSite takes care of that local host, host file change that you would need in order to run any domain that you want locally. So you don't have to, be limited to dnndev.me.
So
And
it
this,
configures all your IIS settings for you right out of the box. No need
it
to even
does.
go in there. That's
Exactly.
slick.
Yep. And what we're going to do here, so you'll see here, I like to keep a lot of mine in an instances folder here. But in this case, I set this up in nvQuick upload. This is the folder where we're at. We'll choose the website folder. Actually, no, we won't. We'll choose upload because this is a base folder and the actual name of the folder that we want to go into, we would put there. So this is just to, a lot of people try to keep all their instances in one folder. So this is just a way to remember that and quickly do the subfolder there instead of having to change this every time. So usually also that matches the site name. In this case, I don't want it. Oh, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Website. You were getting ready to catch me on that, weren't you?
I was wondering.
I could see it
going somewhere else with it.
Yeah, I could see your brain going there. I'm like, oh yeah, he's getting ready to get me. Okay, so website. So that should match it. Now we can go next. And it's going to say everything in this folder is going to be, deleted prior to the installation. And the only thing we've put in there are the build output things. And it's okay if that gets deleted. So we'll just rebuild again. So I'll go next. And then this is going to automatically set up a new database in my local SQL Server instance here. If you had an explicit instance name, you would have that in here. But in my case, I'm just using local. And I'm going to use Windows authentication with this for local development. That's totally fine. Actually, for production, that's totally fine. Okay, so we'll go next. And what this is going to do in just a matter of no time is it's going to set up DNN for us. And that way we can just kick off the DNN install straight in our browser. So far, so good with my computer here too. It's not, that's going a little bit slower than normal because of the live stream here, but hey, we haven't had any major glitches except for my trackpad.
And so these sites that are created by nvQuickSite, they're all subdomains of dnndev.me?
No, they have nothing to do
No?
with dnndev.me. It's all handled through your local host file, on your computer. And it's just mapping whatever name you put to it to 127.0.0.1. So it's essentially saying, hey, if I type that into my browser, send me to my own machine. Okay, so that's all extracted and ready to go. Normally that's a little bit faster there, but we'll go visit site. And this will kick off the DNN install, but using the domain that I had put in there. So this is just a nice and quick way to install DNN without having to jump through a bunch of hoops there. Now the first load of this obviously is going to take a little bit because it has to do its thing with the ASP.NET and copying everything over to the global assembly cache and all that good stuff. But you'll find this is the familiar piece of kicking off the install of DNN. So I'll just put in a password here that I want to use, and I'll put in my email address, and we'll call this one nvQuickUpload. All right. And I'll just use the default website. Now I don't have to change anything in here because nvQuickSite took care of putting all that into the web config for me. But if you wanted to see them, you can go to custom and you can see that it's already set up to do local, the database name that we put in, and it's actually going to be user defined. I can go here. Oh shoot, I probably shouldn't have done that. Oh, it's integrated. No, I'm sorry. We're doing Windows authentication. Yep. So we're using Windows authentication. It's just going to take care of everything for us. So we don't have to change anything in here other than putting in our initial information. And if everything goes right, this should finish the installation process for DNN. And I'll go ahead and save this. I've got a couple of passwords remembered that are not in use anymore, but Chrome complains to me about them all the time. I need to go in there and clean them out.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of times when I'll build a development environment with DNN, I'll just throw in password for password, and it does not like that at all.
No, it doesn't. That's actually what it was complaining about is the temporary password that I used for this site. I just typed in a rendition of that, that I use locally. While this is going, once we get the DNN up and running here, then we'll have a full environment where we can build that project into it and install it and make sure that everything is working with the starting point. And I just want to be able to show everybody what the starting point really is for the project. We're going to kind of get rid of all that when it all comes down to it. But we're going to, just need to really understand the starting point before we start hacking things away. And I also realized this is probably going to go a little bit longer than I anticipated, just simply because of the install times and stuff like that. But hang with us because there's some good stuff coming. Good stuff coming.
Well, I'm not going anywhere.
Man, I was going to try to get done in time for the Carolina Panthers game, but I'm going to have to turn it on and stream it silently over here. So if you see me looking over here, that's what I'm doing, seeing what the score is.
Yeah, well, you don't like DVR? You want to see it live?
Oh man, what is DVR? I haven't really seen that in a long time. I probably could start it up and actually record it on my Xbox or something. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so obviously that went a little bit slower than normal, but we'll go and we'll have a working instance of DNN here, and it should log us in automatically as the host user that we set up. I found when I am live streaming, things like this just goes slower. So when I'm saying, oh, see how quick this is? And then it's not quick. So much fun.
That's because you got so much going on with your live streaming software.
That's true. It's a little taxing.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm doing this in a VM.
I can't believe how fast it is. Oh, excuse me, not Quick Thing, but QuickSite.
Don't worry. I do that all the time. I say the other one when I'm really talking about the other one. Okay, so we're up and running.
Both great tools.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now we have DNN running, and if we go back to our folder structure here, we've got website folder, and as you will, oh, shoot, I didn't do that right. I spoke too soon about the glitches. We're going to have to get rid of all this. So what we're going to do, I totally chose the wrong folder. I chose website as the base folder, and I should have chose the actual upload folder as the base folder, and then it would put the website folder in there. Okay, so bear with me. This is live, and we're keeping it raw, y'all. We're going to start up nvQuickSite again. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear out this folder. I'm
you just can't move those files over.
I could, but it would mess up. Iis wouldn't know where everything is. The databases can't really easily be moved. So what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to do an Iis reset here, just to let loose of the files that we just started because we were running it in the browser. So I'll do that, and then we'll clear this out and real quickly get it going again. So apologies for the snafu. That was totally my fault. I wasn't thinking straight. Yeah, like nvQuickSite creates 3 folders. It'll create a website folder, a database folder, and then a logs folder for your Iis logs. So when you're using this starter template, let's see. Oh, I may not have started this in administrator mode. I meant to. We'll do that again. There we go. Yeah, I must not have done this one in administrator. So we'll just do the same thing we just did. I don't want to download it because I've already got it. We're going to use the same thing, but this time we're going to go up to the nvquick And then here we're going to do upload. And then what that'll do is it'll create those folders in the root of that.
So we'll blame my puzzled look on that one. I think it threw you off.
Yeah, and I just realized I didn't get rid of these here. I'm going to permanently delete all of those. Yeah, I thought it would have trouble with the database. Yep. So one of the good things about messing up when you're live streaming is that, you know, a lot of people would just stop the live stream and come back and freak out, right? No, we're actually going to fix it. So if this happens to you, you'll know exactly how to go and fix it. So what I'm doing is I'm opening SQL Server Management Studio because it just complained to me about not being able to remove the local database file, which was in that databases folder, which was in that websites folder. So what we've got to do is we've got to come into SQL Server Management Studio and actually manually, we can do several things. We could either manually remove that database, which is right here. That's the database that it created. That's what I'm going to choose to do here. Or we could restart the database server and it'll let loose and all the connections that were to it. The problem is we had an open connection because of actually starting the website. So the website was connected to the database. Even though we restarted Iis, it didn't let loose yet of that database connection. So I'm just going to choose to delete the database here because we have the power to do so. And we can do this, close existing connections. So now that that database is gone, we should be able to now finish removing that one folder that wouldn't remove. So I'm going to permanently delete that. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay. So we're going to say yes because we got the right folder selected this time. So what we should expect here is that this will put, I'm going to go up one folder level. It'll actually create two additional folders here, one for database and one for logs, for the Iis logs, but it's going to utilize this website folder here as well. So we're going to go yes, and we'll use the same name, and that's what it's done. So now we've got a database folder and a logs folder. These are not part of your project, so don't worry about those. You can actually add those if you're using like Git, you know, for source control. You can ignore those folders as well in your git ignore file. Website is already ignored in your git ignore, so this file here, we'll look at that in just a minute, but I can show you where you can ignore those if they're not already ignored. So I may have had the foresight to actually put those in there. I can't remember if I did or not. This really only applies if you're using nvQuickSite, I guess, should probably say. Because it's going to create that folder structure for you there, which you should totally be able to do. Is that making sense, Steve? Is that?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
You know, it did answer a question I had just the other day when I opened up the root folder of a DNN site I had installed, and I saw a website, and I'm thinking, where did that folder come from? I didn't know if that was a new structure that DNN was taking on, but obviously it came from nvQuickSite.
Ah, yes. So I will type in this unsecure password here again. And we'll name it the same thing. Oops. There we go. And I'll click continue. And we'll get that going. So a little bit of a snafu there, but at least now you know how to get out of that if it happens. And you know, we did all that without disrupting what's going on here. But we changed things a little bit. We haven't changed any of our code that we care about, you know, for the module. So you don't have to worry about that in this regard. We'll get this up and running, and then what we're going to do, I'll pick up where I left off before. We're going to install that module in its starting point and actually see it in action, put it on a page, and see what it does. And we'll be happy campers to start renaming our project at that point, and then we'll wrap up for this session. But you can imagine, I mean, we're taking a lot of time to talk about things and fix issues that I'm creating here. But once you get used to this flow, I mean, it takes you a second to run DNN once you have it installed, the DNN CLI, get the starter project there. Then you're going to install DNN. And then, I took a little bit of time to explain kind of how the build process is working just so everybody would know. But once you know how this works, you're not going to be doing all that, every time. So, and you also won't be building the initial project because you'll know that it's a solid project right from the beginning. So you can just kind of start modifying it for your use in your own custom module. While that's going, let's see. Nope, I'll wait a little bit for that. Let's see. Some other stuff open here I probably should have closed out, but waiting for the first load here. I'm resisting the urge to jump ahead and start explaining things that I'm going to be doing. I want to keep it simple here.
So who are the Panthers playing today?
Oh man, you had to ask me that. I think it's the Broncos, but I can't honestly remember. It is. Gosh, I don't remember. Well, look. Yes, the Broncos. Hey, I was right. Denver Broncos. Okay, so we're here. Now what we need to do is we need to rebuild that solution in release mode so that we have an install package so that we can install the module and see it working, right? So we'll do build, rebuild solution in release mode. So that's going to put the install package for this module into the root of DNN/install/module. And then that way it'll be in the available extensions for us to install. And when you're developing your own modules, you have to go through that. You kind of have to work out your packaging process so that you can install it, so that you don't have to manually register the module. A lot of people, I think, get in trouble when they're developing extensions and they try to go through and manually register without working out their build process, their packaging process first. Maybe you're doing that manually, which you can do. Nothing really wrong with that, but that's the more you do things manually, the more you're error prone, as well. So I like this process because it really kind of works backwards, but it helps you know that you have a proper build process to use. So now that we've done that, we should be able to theoretically go into extensions and go to available extensions, and voila, there's our module. And it's at 0.0.1 because a lot of times you want to start at a non 1.0 version, right? As you're developing. So now we should just be able to do install. And we can see that this is looking good here. Next. And there's kind of a starting point release notes that's already in the project for you. Nice formatted. And then we've got a nice license already there. Nice formatting. So you kind of have a good starting point, for doing things, quote, right. And then next. And voila, it is installed successfully. So we go done. And now we should be able to go and drop this on a page. So we'll just go pages and we'll just call this, I don't know, SPA. How about SPA? And I'll go ahead and change permissions so this is available to all users. View. So we'll add page. And now we've got a new page here. If it will go to it. Oh,
A lot of times I have to hit Control F5 to clear the browser cache for the page to appear.
Oh, actually, what just happened is this is the first actual reload of the page itself. We were in the persona bar. We never reloaded after I built that module. So it had actually dropped the DLL. So it had to cycle or had to reload the global assembly cache. So that's why that was taking so long. Okay, so add module. Now we should be able to drop this module onto the page. So I'll just type in SPA up there, and there's our starter module SPA. We'll click plus, drag this up to here, and I'll get rid of this little guy here because that's the HTML module that gets injected onto the page by default. Should have done that first. So actually, there's our module. It's actually working. So if I were to, and I'll close edit mode here so that we can see how it works. But this is actually the module telling us hello and where it's telling us hello from. So if we put in our name here, right, David, then I can click personalize. Hello, David from DNN. So this is actually a functional, module that does something. And we won't dig into all the details of what that's doing, but it's actually using Web API to give us a response back. So if we were to, we won't go look at the code, but I'll just show you kind of how this is showing up. If I go over into the network and I switch this to XHR here, I'm going to reload. What we'll see is we'll actually see the DNN hello endpoint, and notice the URL there is our domain /API /starter module -spa /home /DNN hello. It's hitting the DNN hello endpoint and giving us a response of hello from DNN. When I type in David and personalize, it hit another endpoint called DNN hello personalize, and it gave us a response back that we're seeing in the message up there. So that's kind of the starting point. So you've got kind of the bare bones of a SPA, kind of set up there where you've got a nice HTML page that has some localization in it. We'll look into that a little bit later as well and all that. So it's a working module. So now we're ready to actually start renaming this project to what we want to call it. And in this case, it's nvQuick upload. So ready to do that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You get some functionality out of the box.
There's not a lot to it, but it's enough to get, and that's, I kind of go back to what I was saying at the beginning. A lot of the scaffolding tools will put a lot more in there, which is actually helpful, if you're experienced in those areas. But if you really want to start with something nice and clean, from the beginning, and you kind of just want to do only what you want to do. Like, for instance, with the Kristock templates, there's a ton of stuff in there. There's sample stuff for every little thing, like your feature controller and stuff like that. It's like there's so much in there that sometimes that gets in the way of you actually doing something simple that you want to do. So I find this clean approach a little bit better. I think the scaffolding is really nice in those, and being able to put in their project name and things like that, and it actually doing what we're getting ready to do manually, it does that better. But, I don't have to have a lot of the opinionated kind of implementation in there. This has your basic controller set up. It's got a model set up. It's got your DNN provider file, but there's nothing in here because there's nothing in a database for this particular module, but this is already set up with, that's where your scripts are going to go. And then it's got your JavaScript for your view set up in there as well. So it really, that and your view HTML and this one doesn't have a settings HTML, but it's like, I don't need all that other stuff. So, it's easy to just go with this. Okay. So what we're going to do here is, this is the part that'll make your mind go a little bit. But we're going to try to make it as simple as possible. I'm going to get out of Visual Studio, full version of Visual Studio. All right. And the reason I'm doing that is because if you're going to manually rename these files, you can't just change the name of the file, because there's information in the project file and the solution file that are related to the namespace. It's impacting your build process a little bit. You saw the targets file we were looking at earlier, the MS Build targets file. that needs to be changed, you know, according to the naming of our module and where it's going to go and all that kind of thing. So what we're going to do is, and you can do this in a text editor if you wanted to as well, but what I like to do is go to this, your main root folder, and I'll just right click and open with VS Code. Now, we're not going to build anything at this point. What we're doing here at this point is really just renaming stuff so that we have a new project that is named appropriately and all that. Seems a little bit simple, but there's quite a bit to do here. And that did open in another window. Why did it do that? Well, there it is. I gotta find that window. It put it on the wrong. Oh my gosh, why did it do that? I've got it on a third monitor over here, and I gotta find a way to get it over here. Oh my gosh. Can I right click on that? No, I can't right click on that. Move it. I'm sorry here. I don't know why it opened it the way that it did, but I can't get to it. I can't drag it. I wonder if I can... I wonder if I can do that. No, I can't. This is the weirdest thing. I've never had this happen. Okay, I found it. I've got it now. I can drag it. Sort of. There it is.
There you go.
Oh man, it was so weird. It had the bottom of the window hanging off of the window, but I couldn't get to the title bar at all. So I had to drag it. Oh, it's, yeah, a little crazy. So you can ignore some of this output stuff that's happening here because Visual Studio Code is trying to figure out what kind of project it just opened. I mean, we just opened the folder, and I'm doing this so that we can get to just edit the files directly. You can't edit the solution file when you have Visual Studio full version open because it's using that file. Same thing with the CS project file. We could actually unload the project and then edit this file. But this initial piece of it, we've got to kind of, I find it easier to do it in Visual Studio Code. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the solution file. I'm going to rename this because I want literally rename the file. And I'm going to call this one, oops. I am going to, well, that's not working the way that it does. Okay. So I'm going to call this nvQuickUpload. Right. And that's kind of my starting point. So I've got to decide what I want to call this module from the beginning. I already know what I want to call it, and that's the way I want it to look. You may think, oh, well, that's easy. That's all we have to do. But notice inside of this file, it's referencing this and this. Okay, so this is the actual project name. That's used in the project file that it's referenced. So what we're going to want to do, we're also going to want to rename the project files, right, to match. We don't want those to be called starter-spa or starter-module-spa. So I'm going to rename this to nvQuickUpload as well. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and rename this user file. This is not part of the project, but this is my local user preferences as it relates to this project. So I'm going to, just for consistency's sake, I'm going to rename this as well so that it matches. And just that piece of it, nvQuickUpload. And here, that's all we'll do for right now. So here, now I should be able to change this to be nvQuickUpload. And I'm going to do it a little bit different because this particular parameter, you don't know this by just looking at it, but it is related to the namespace for the project. So I like to follow a convention that goes like your company name. In this case, it would be Envisionative, since we sponsor that project. Let's see, and then I'll do dot modules, and then dot whatever the actual module name. So the second piece of it is kind of like your type of extension that you're doing. And then the lastly is the name of the project. So now I can just name the project to match the file name that we did here. So nvquick, quick upload, right? And that theoretically should be all that I need to do to the solution file. But this has to be decided before you kind of get started, because that's kind of the tricky part. If you don't do this right, you can change it once you get in there and all that, but you kind of want to follow, you want to get your namespace worked out. And, you know, for those that aren't C# developers, anything like that, you know, these things are namespace, you know, throughout your project. So it's going to have namespaces for different files, C# files in the project. So you want to kind of work out that. This is your base namespace, if you will. So I'm going to save that. All right. And then now we can go this. Now, theoretically, we could go and open up this solution and it would open up this project file now, but we would have to unload the project in Visual Studio Code, and that you can do that by right-clicking on the file and doing unload. Then we could actually see the text of the CS project file. But I find it easier just to do it in Visual Studio Code here. So one thing that you can do is, there's a lot that you can ignore here, but essentially we want to find everywhere that it's starter underscore module underscore spa or starter dash module dash spa. And we want to replace those. Now, the reason these are underscores on the root namespace is because you can't have dashes in the namespace. So it's a little weird, but don't worry about it. It's really just for this right here. So we're going to replace starter with Envisionative. We're going to leave module there. And spa, we're going to do nvquick upload. Right. And then here, the assembly name, this is actually what the DLL will be called when it goes out, when it gets built. Does that make sense? So the resulting DNN, oh, you know what? I don't want to use dots. I just realized I want to stick to my namespace pattern that I had done. I'm going to use dots there. And here I'm going to do Vision, if I could type. Am I not typing in Envisionative dot module dot nvquick upload? So the DLL will actually be Envisionative dot module dot nvquick upload dot DLL. That's what's actually going to be put into the bin folder when it's installed. I mean, when it's built. And that, let's see, is that it? I think that's close to it, if not it. While we're in here, I mentioned earlier that I would show you a piece of the MS Build part of it that's in here. You'll notice that this import here is pulling in that module. No, I'm sorry. About the wrong thing. Module package starters, that's part of a NuGet package for MS Build. But the deploy module and package module are things that are going to happen as a result of what's in that targets file that's in there. But that's the piece of it that pulls that in. But here's the DNN file name. What this is your manifest. So this over here, the .dnn file, you want to make sure that this matches there, and just making sure I'm not screwing that up. I think I want to make that the same thing as the namespace here. Oops. Envisionative dot modules dot nvquick upload. So I'll just make that match there. All right, and then now I can save this, and that gives me permission to really change this. Okay, the name of this file. manifest file. So I want that to be nvnative dot modules dot nvquick upload. Now, the way I'm doing this is really kind of my preference, but you don't have to follow this pattern. It's just that you have to be consistent, with, if you're referencing it one way in one place, you want to make sure that you actually have it that way when it gets there. So you may like a different pattern for this, and you can certainly do pretty much anything that you want to here. But now, while we're here, let's go ahead and update this. Now, we could update this when we open up the full studio version as well, but I find it easier just to do it as I'm going along here, because a lot of these are just basic blind text edits, if you will, where we're not really worried about the build. So the actual package name itself, I think I want that to be following the same pattern, the nvnative.modules.nvquick upload. And yeah, sure, the version, we'll keep it as there. For those of you not familiar with the manifest file, this is really what DNN uses to know how to handle the files during the install process for it. It also helps registration of the module and all that. So it's a lot of metadata that's associated with called the manifest file.
Yeah. So it's very similar if you've ever done any theming in .NET Nuke. You've got your manifest file that you maintain.
Exactly.
Which kind of leads me to the question, is a theme essentially a module?
Yeah, actually, it's an extension. So all extensions use the manifest concept. So a theme is just another kind of extension. Yep. So sometimes this changes, the type. So this will change to the type of extension that it is. And that tells DNN to handle it a little bit differently accordingly. Because, and there's a lot to the manifest and what you can do in here. And there's different thought processes on how people like to do this and so forth. But let's see, we'll just call this a file upload module. How about that? Really fancy there. And we'll change the owner information. Vision native, and then we'll do Vision native here. And you can do C data and stuff in these fields as well. And so that way, if you have formatted information and stuff you want to do, actually this is probably ultimately going to be in a site for that, but for right now I'll just do that, and we'll do support at envisionative.com. How about that? And then here we want to this is the minimum version of DNN that you want to support for this module. So in this case, we're always going to kind of be pushing the latest and greatest. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that at 9.8.0, which is what we're building against now. So if like you're doing a commercial extension or something like that, you might would want to support older versions, but it's always a quandary that you get in. It's like, well, you want to encourage people to upgrade DNN because it's just best for them to do so. But at the same time, there's cases where people just can't upgrade yet, and you want to make sure your module works for those. So, I could leave this at an older version just to make sure that it works on older versions as well. But in this case, I think I'm just going to make it the latest and greatest and say, hey, if you want to use it, upgrade, right? Okay. And then here, this is where we start dealing with the paths, right, of where it's going to go. So I like to follow the model of I would probably put it in a company folder, because if we have multiple modules, so if you're building those for your internal use or something for your company or whatever, you may have multiple custom modules. So you would put it there and then into a folder for this. So in this case, we'll just call this nvquick upload. And then this is okay. This is okay. This is the base path for where the resource files are going to go. This is part of the packaging and stuff that's going to happen. So it just references that. So we're going to go to make sure this matches. Now, again, we're not going into a lesson here. Oops, Envision. I can't spell our company name. Sometimes there's forward slashes and sometimes there's backward slashes, depending on what node you're in here. So it's a little bit confusing in that regard. But the starter, just be sure when you're working with the starter here that it's matching what it was in there before. You might get some interesting results if you don't. So we'll do this. And then our module name, it's follow suit here. So we'll go, I'm going to go with the full namespace name here, actually. Because that matches the module name that we used up here.
David, when you create the module name, you mentioned or referenced putting your modules in a company folder.
Yeah.
The DNN Community modules, they're in their own folder directly without being in a
Yeah, they usually are.
folder.
Yeah, they usually are. The only thing that you like, where this comes helpful is like if you don't want to run into potential naming conflicts with other, it's like if we just called this a generic file upload and put it into desktop modules, well, somebody else might also create a file upload module. So it just adds another layer of uniqueness to that and helping you find things that are related to one particular company. So, and then folder name, we want this one to, this is actually going to be the folder where it lives in. So this one's a little tricky. You won't know to do the slash and stuff here, but this is actually from desktop modules where it's going to go. So Envision Native / nvQuick upload, and this is a / here. And let's see, we've got the module definite. Oh, this is a friendly name. We need to change that. We'll call that nvQuick upload. So yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit of things to change here, and you could do this the hard way. I mean, we've already done all that we needed to do to actually open it up in Visual Studio and start working with it. But again, I just like to do it all in one fell swoop here. Let's see, this is going to be Envision Native, nvQuick upload. And we're getting close. So this one is the actual DLL name. So this would be envisionative.modules.nvQuickUpload.dll. And I think that is actually it for this. So I'm going to save that. And then I think the only other thing I really kind of want to touch here, we'll just kind of quickly look through these to see. Nothing really there that needs to be changed. Now in here, I would want to change in our build script because it's now the project name is wrong and stuff like that. So I want to update that accordingly and really only have to worry about this section right here. So it's not like you really have to know MS build and all that, but this will be matching the namespace again, because that's what we used for the module or for the project name. The website folder is correct. That is where we're building to, but obviously if you had a different name for that website folder, you'd use that. But we're wanting to deploy when we're in debug mode to desktop modules / Envision Native nvQuick upload. And that's really it for that file. And I think that's all. Everything else really, oh, I'm sorry, that's the database folder. Models, nothing in models, and we don't have to worry about packages. Now, there's some assembly info stuff that we could update here, but this is a C# file, so we'll just wait until we get into, I mean, we could do it here or there, 6 one way, half a dozen the other. But this is what tells Visual Studio what to what to do with the versioning of the file and the information that's associated with that DLL. So let me Put this up over here. Don't mess something up here, but let's see the assembly title. We can just follow the same pattern we were doing before. Modules dot mv quick upload, and I accidentally got rid of a quotation there, so we're going to call this one, it's just a description for the assembly. So a file upload module, something like that. And the company, put your company information in here. The assembly product, this shows up when you're like, if you do a right click and go to properties on a DLL, you'll see a lot of this information that shows up there, either on the summary or the details on that. So we'll just put what we want to call this one. This is nvQuick upload. And then any copyright information that you might want to put in here. So we'll do that. And actually I'll put link on this one, make it a little bit more formal. And that's it for this. The versioning, we'll manage that as we go through the project and stuff, but we can save that. And I think that's it, really. I don't know of anything else that we need to do here. So, you know, crossing our fingers, if everything goes as planned, we should be able to open this up in Visual Studio now and test out our build process and, you know, see what happens, right? But we'll just double check in here. I don't see any rogue old files there. So it's either going to work or it's not going to work, you know, and then we'll just fix anything that doesn't work. But, you know, that was probably a lot, but it's really just the solution file and the project file that you have to do in order to get to this point. So we'll restart or open up Visual Studio full blown ID here. And we can't use this anymore because that's not what it was, right? So I'll go ahead and remove that from my list here just so I have it. So I'll go open a project or solution. We'll navigate this. Again, the reason we're doing this is so that we can open it up in administrator privileges. Once we do this, when we go here in the future, it'll actually show up in our project list there for Visual Studio. So normally this is where you would see any problems if it can load it or not, right? So if everything goes as planned and we did our job right, it should just load it. So I'm looking for this to go away because this is where all the background tasks and stuff are running. Once it finishes that and it says it's ready, then okay, we got a check mark. So we're ready. Theoretically, it's working, right? Okay, so the project references, we missed one reference. We must have left something in the project file that was referencing the manifest file. So there's a couple ways we could fix that. And I'll show you kind of that trick of where you can unload the project in here and edit the actual project file. We could either edit the project file or we could just manually remove this from the project and add the correct one, because we know we changed the file, right? We just missed a reference to the file. So we're looking for these little yellow warning signs, you know, here, because that's what the problem is. So we'll unload this and we'll try to find where our mess up was. So I can just right click on the project and choose unload project. Now that'll open up that same CSproj file, the text version, as we were looking at in VS Code. So we could have closed this out and did it in VS Code, but you know, in this case, we'll just fix it here. So I will search in here using Control F. I'll look for starter. That'll be a good, yep, there it is. So it had a file reference to that manifest file. So we need to make sure that that is named what we named it. So we'll just do visionative.modules.nvQuick upload and save. And while we're in here, we'll just see if there's anything else with starter. I don't see anything. I meant to do that in Visual Studio Code because you could actually search the entire folder for the word starter or something. You'd be able to find all the instances of it. And that would have caught this issue. But So these are just where it's telling Visual Studio what files are a part of the project. So
that's a good tip. Just use search the entire folder for starter, and you'll find anything you've missed.
yep, exactly. Because I mean, unless you're using that in the Word, in the project that you're doing, So okay, now we can just right click on it and reload the project. And crossing our fingers. Okay, now it is showing that manifest file there, so that's what I want to make sure it was loading that manifest file. Okay. Now the big test. See if it builds, right? So what we're going to do is make sure we're in debug mode, because we want to try that first. So we'll do build and rebuild. Yeah, you know what? Because we changed everything, I'm going to clean the solution, and that'll kind of get rid of stuff that is in the temporary folders. And like the OBJ folder here, there's stuff in there for debug and release mode. It'll clean that up before you do it, as well as the bin folder in the module itself. It will have cleaned those up with any rogue stuff. Now, notice that it didn't remove these, because the Visual Studio project now thinks that it's only going to clean up what it knows about. So since we renamed everything, it didn't know to clean these up. So there's nothing wrong really at this point with just deleting everything that's in the module bin folder, not the DNN bin folder, but the modules bin folder. This is the local build environment, right? So we can just delete those because we don't need those anymore. And we can also go into OBJ, and it's going to probably be the same way. It's going to have some stuff in here. Yep. See, anything with starter, dash module, all that stuff, that could actually be gone. It didn't know to clean it up. So there's nothing wrong really with just deleting all of this. It'll rebuild these folders for you, so it's not a problem. We can just get rid of those just to get clean here. You don't have to do this, but you may have some rogue files in there.
But even if you didn't remove them, they wouldn't necessarily cause a problem with the build.
They shouldn't. I like to clean things up so that I don't have stuff left over from the original project. And that's kind of the hard part about using a starter project instead of a template that does all this stuff for you from the beginning. That's really the only problem that I see with using this kind of approach to it. Okay, so now we go back into here, and we should be able to just rebuild. Now you can build. I always like to do rebuild just because that does a clean and a build at the same time, theoretically, if everything's set up right. And it looks like it is referencing the right thing. Okay, cool. So could not find file in visionative.module.nvQuickUpload.dnn. So I'm reading that carefully because I want to see if it's spelled right. So it can't find that file. So let's see where that is. So there it is. All right. Let's look on disk and see where it is. Let's see if I spelled it right. Envisionative.modules.nvQuickUpload.dnn. So the file is there. So we must be referencing it somewhere and it not being able to find it. So this is an odd one. So we'll figure it out though.
Well, the print on the screen is a little small for me to quite make out, but is one module and one modules? Is there?
That's a good point.
Plural?
Ah, yes. Modules. Module. Oh, you know what? When we did that change to the project file, I probably left off the S. So we'll unload this. We'll go look for that. I'm going to look for .dnn. Nope, that's plural. Okay, so we did that somewhere else then. So what we'll do is, that's only instance in there, so we'll reload this. My guess is I did it in the actual build script. No. Oh, yep. My Project name, no. Let's see. .dnn. Oh, project name. Ah. Yep. So this is a good one. I mean, you can easily get yourself into this quandary. I use envisionative.module.nvQuickUpload for my namespace and project name, and I meant to use modules. So we know we need to fix it here, but I think there's probably other areas. So I'm going to save that in the targets because it's actually using this variable called project name when it looks for the manifest later on in the build process. It's using project name.dnn. So that's what it's complaining about now. My guess is I've got it elsewhere, so I'm going to just go back and unload this project and look for module. And notice I have it here wrong as well. So I'm going to fix the root namespace to be modules. I'm going to fix the assembly name to be modules. Because the namespace is like, this is where all of the Envisionative modules are going to be, but this is the specific one for this particular project. So let's go ahead and see if there's any other ones that are in here. I don't see any other problems with this file now, so I'm just going to save it and we will reload. Now theoretically it should build, so we'll see what happens here. Does that make sense? I mean, I just had a mismatch in the project name and the namespace and all that. So I'm in debug mode and hopefully we won't have any errors this time. It's looking good so far.
Good learning extent. Yeah.
These are the kind of things you get into. I mean, it's usually something simple. It's a typo, or something like that. Yeah. And this looks a little scary on all the stuff we're doing, but we really didn't change a whole lot. So once you get used to doing this, I mean, it's usually a 5-minute, and then you spend another 5 minutes troubleshooting a typo that you made or something like that. So it's usually pretty quick doing this. So it's actually deployed that module. So what we can do is we can now go and check in our local bin folder here, see if we got the DLL right. Yeah, DLL looks good. We've got our symbols file. The PDB file is our debug symbols. And then it creates a config file as well for the DLL that gets used. Let's see. If we go into the website itself, we should now see a desktop modules Envisionative, which we do. That's good. And an nvQuickUpload folder. And yep, that's actually looking perfect. The only thing that I'm seeing that's wrong is the website is being put out here as well. So it actually put almost the entire website into there. So that's definitely a problem with that. So that's something we'll have to look into. It shouldn't be copying over the website folder. So either we have a rogue website folder thing there, or we've got something wrong with the build process for that. Does that make sense? These other ones are, what they're supposed to be for the module. So that's looking good. Let's see if we notice that the old one is still there, because this is in the DNN website folder, right? So the starter module SPA is still there. It's fine. It can be there. But also remember that we haven't installed this new module, so we would have to pretend like we were starting over again. Well, we are starting over again, but a new module. So as far as DNN is concerned, that's a completely different module, right? It's got a different namespace. It's got all kinds of different information associated with the module. So we would have to reinstall that. So in order to do that, we've got to also test our release build. We want to make sure it packages it up okay. That's a pretty good sign right there. Success. Great success. Okay, so we'll go over here. We'll just see that it put that. So we're in our DNN instance here. If we go website, install, module. Yep, there it is. Exactly where it said it should be. Now what I want to do is I want to see if it put that website folder in here, because I think we probably ought to fix that build issue there before we go any further. So I'm going to open up that zip file. Resources is probably where it's going to be. Okay, it didn't put it in there. So I think we just have a problem. This tells me that our debug build is messed up, but not our release build. That makes sense, kind of the way I'm thinking through that. I didn't see a website folder in our resources zip file inside of the, the package for it. So that's where I think we need to either that folder. Yeah, I think probably the build is messed up somewhere. It's probably one of those variable names. So this is where I'm going to go and look. And since it was named website, I probably will just search for website or website folder and see what it's doing in here. So there's website, there's website, there's website. Let's see. Okay, so oops, I went too far. Let me go back. So this is supposed to exclude the website folder, but for some reason that's not excluding it. So I kind of want to get to know a little bit about, I guess, MS build for this to make a whole lot of sense. But let's see, this is part of the, so there's two main sections here. This is the debug section. So the targets, if I collapse this down, you'll see a target for the release build and you'll see a target for the debug build. Those are the two main sections here that you're looking at. So these are common to both of them, which is kind of cleanup stuff. And this is the debug where we see the problem. So I'm really just looking in here to see what is included. So the resources that are included is module resources, which is all the resx files, HTML files, CSS styles in there. I don't see where it's getting the website folder though. So let's see. Copy resources. So deploy folder, which is up at the very top, is one of the first variables we got. And then recursively. So that might be part of the problem. Let's see. Deploy folder is there. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just get rid of this website folder manually inside of the DNN instance. I'm going to rebuild this in debug mode just to make sure that it's wrong, that it's doing wrong, because I can't really explain why that would be there. So I'm expecting it to do the same thing again and put it in there. So I'll go back to debug mode. I just want to prove it before I go down a wild goose chase here. Oops. What did I just do? Did I close it? I did. Dang it. We've got it open in another window over here, so give me just a second. I'll pull it over there. Go into here. Upload. And then we got our website folder, desktop modules, Envision Native, quick upload. Yeah, it did put it there. So it's definitely not excluding the website folder for some crazy reason now. It was not doing that on the other one, I don't think. So let's just double check that. Let's go to the other module that we had, the starting module. So starter module SPA. Yeah, see, it wasn't putting the websites folder in there. So we definitely created this bug. did I change anything? Changed this. Let's see. I didn't touch the build process itself though. So let's see. I wonder if that's the symbols file. Let's see. That's recursive. I'm kind of looking for. So there's website. Oh, it's including website. Why in the world would it do that? That's in release mode. Resources. Oh, exclude. Sorry. Explicitly excluding all that there. So that's right. I keep looking to see which target I'm in because when I'm doing the search, it's kind of hard to tell. This is manifest. This excluding website, excluding website, excluding website. Huh. Well, I can't really for the life of me figure out what's causing that. So that's something we'll either have to fix now or come back to it in the next session, just to make sure. What I'll probably do instead of taking too much time here is just leave it at this, because we really have the starting point. We just got a small, build issue in the debug, and I'll try to research the answer here, and when I come into the next session, we'll cover that right from the get-go and fix that. So, I mean, Steve, do you have any questions on this? I'll recap kind of what we went through here, but I just wanted to see if you had any, anything that's just fuzzy or not really clear about how we did this and set it up.
No, not really. I'm actually kind of anxious to give it a try once this is all done.
Cool.
Yeah.
So just to recap for everybody, we started with DNN CLI. We installed that on our local machine, and via the command line, we were able to run that command. We chose a SPA module as our type, and it set it up into a directory that we created. And in this case, we created the directory. Let's see, we created it right here. We created an upload directory inside of nvQuick, because that's where we wanted to put this. And it went ahead and cloned a copy of that repo on GitHub. And that repo is out at the DNN Community org on GitHub. And it is here. So github.com/DNN Community/starter-module-spa. And that gave us that local. And we went ahead and just kind of walked through that project with what it does and getting it built in debug mode and release mode, explaining where the outputs of that are. Then we set up a local DNN instance in a website folder that is automatically part of that. And in this case, we used nvQuickSite to do that. And that added a couple extra folders of database logs, and then it used the existing website folder to put the DNN instance in. And then we installed the starter project into DNN just to test the install package, make sure it worked. We placed that on a page, got that working after we messed up DNN instance, or after I messed it up, and got it working on the page to see that it's an actual functional module. And then at that point, we started the process to rename that module. And we did that mostly in VS Code to modify the solution file name, the CS project file name, and then so forth on down through here. I think the manifest we touched the build scripts in there to make sure our paths were set up, because we put this module into a subfolder of the company name. By default, it's not in a subfolder under desktop modules. And then we just debugged our typos that we had made during that process. When we opened it up in Visual Studio, it couldn't find the manifest file, so we realized we had a typo there, and we fixed that. And then made sure that it built in there. And it built both in debug mode and in release mode okay, but the debug mode has one bug in it, in that it is somehow copying part of the website folder into the module folder. So in here, what's final output here, it's actually putting part of that into the website. So we've got a minor build issue that we're going to have to circle back to on the next session, but now we have a source for our module, our custom module that we want to build here, and we've got a build process, and it's looking pretty good. So next session, what we'll do is we will come back to the build issue, and I'll try to have that one done, but we'll also set up a basic view as well as a view model with some placeholder stuff in it. So that'll be the next session that we'll go from here, and we'll have some fun doing that. Steve, thanks for joining me on this.
Oh,
It was
sure,
a lot
it
of
was a
fun.
pleasure. I have to say, from my perspective, I'm actually kind of glad you had some problems, because it showed me how to take care of those issues if they do arise.
Absolutely. I like that because it's real, and it's
Yeah.
like, because we all make mistakes. We're human. So it's nice to know how to figure it out once something goes wrong, kind of what the thought process is there. So I appreciate you bearing with me through that, and us both learning a little bit more in the process. It's fun when you mess up, and you finally find the answer. It's like, oh, okay, I won't make that mistake again. Good. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. If you like this content, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below, as well as post some comments in there and let me know what kind of things that you would be interested in hearing from in the future. If you'd like to join me or something like that, I'm always open to that kind of thing. We have fun on here. So be sure to hit the little notifications icon as well, so you get notified of future streams. And I'll kind of go back to this. Thanks for joining on the file upload using DropzoneJS, which we'll get to eventually. We'll get to that piece of it in a DNN
Look forward
module.
to it.
Okay, well, take care, everybody, and have a great day.